My parents are in their 60s, and my spouse and I are in our 30s. We live a state apart, about 6 hours drive. My spouse and I have a 2-year-old who is not yet eligible for a COVID vaccine, and we've been taking every precaution we can to keep her safe while also holding down our jobs. My parents are both vaccinated and boosted, but regularly take risks that we do not, going out to eat at restaurants, recreational travel, not wearing masks in places that don't require it, etc. On their most recent visit, my mom had been hosting a professional workshop that involved some up-close hands-on instruction and informed us at dinner that she'd decided to take her mask off as she was instructing students, since it was so hard to teach with it on. This, as she held our kid on her lap and fed them food off her fork. My parents were due to visit today, and we had asked them to get a PCR test beforehand to make sure everyone was safe, especially our kid. They went to get tests on New Year's Eve, complaining to us all the while about what a pain it was to go to an urgent care center and sit for hours of potential exposure. Could have made an appointment earlier since we've been planning this visit for weeks. They arrived at their hotel yesterday evening, and in the process of opening discussion of plans for their visit, I texted them yesterday evening to ask if they could please send us copies of their tests' results. At 10 a.m. today, about 14 hours later, I received a long email from my mom, effectively saying, "No, we won't show you our test results. How dare you think that we would make the trip here if we were sick? If you can't trust us to that extent, you shouldn't let us into your home anyway." Over the course of the next few hours, my wife and I both sent them digital copies of our recent COVID tests and emphasized that this was a pretty normal thing for people to be doing these days, and that we would really like to see them. But we'd like to see the test results. Please? No dice. My parents have never been so insulted, can't believe that we don't trust them, etc. According to both my parents, yes, they have negative results, but no, we can't see them. I had a phone conversation with them in which I told them that I loved them, explained that we're trying to look out for the health of our kid, and hoped they would reconsider. They claimed they would never have made the drive if they knew we would make the ask. My mom cried. My dad was angry. In their own defense, they also brought up how risky it was for them to make the trip as older people and the risks I've taken traveling to other parts of the world, pre-COVID, and the time I smoked weed when I was 17, among other things. If they have negative results, it would be the work of 15 seconds to send us proof. I think I believe them, but their reaction makes me wonder more than I would have before. As far as I know, they're now driving 6 sad hours back home. No visit, no time with grandkiddo. Can't say I'm feeling good about doing this to them, but I gotta protect my family in these tough times. So this happened almost X years ago, and it just now came to full fruition. The entities and/or people involved. 1. Abe, larger store. 2. B, franchise inside Abe. 3. D, problematic employee of B. 4. C, core worker. Rewind almost X years ago. I'm still employed at B's within another larger, more successful store, Abe, and almost at my 7-year mark, with 0 disciplinary marks or unexcused absences, etc. I was pretty well known in the larger store's management and would often resolve issues that stemmed from B being within their store that our current management would fail at or ignore. The work environment grew over my employment at B's to be toxic due to little oversight or follow-through from an overworked management team. It was the standard stuff a lot of places do. Try to dish more responsibilities off to hard workers with promises and/or low pay increases, while the crap of the lot got away with whatever. Unless you flat out stole, you could mess around for most of your shift while the few loyal others worked and while still getting paid with little to no consequences. Well, this grew to a head, and one day a new employee D, who was hardly ever sober when clocked in, caused a scene which resulted in me intervening, which resulted in them physically threatening me numerous times in a very aggressive manner, all on video, by the way. So, a co-worker C, while witnessing this, called management of B, who flat out told them to not call police, despite there being threats of violence, but rather call security within AB. Highly illegal in my parts, but we will get to that later. So I called security. This whole ordeal resulted in Abe's head of security watching the video and then immediately calling police and searching for D to eject them from the store and/or possibly arrest, completely circumventing B's management. Well, turns out, D already fled so they couldn't eject them from the store, question, or even get their side of the story. Abe thanked me for my cooperation with statements, info, etc. I then called my management at B's and informed them of what happened, gave them a real piece of my mind pertaining to the toxic environment, no cussing, and then told them I would be clocking out for the rest of my shift due to distress caused by their continued negligence. They agreed that would be best, and I left. I was then informed the next day by phone from B that I was being terminated. I calmly said I understood and requested in writing why my employment was being terminated via mail or email. They agreed, and I said thank you and hung up. This caused quite a stir within Abe's, and they expressed how upset and confused they were on how I was being treated to B. Well, the next day I get that email from B, and it says I was being fired for calling security and contributing to a dangerous situation. Okay, cool. You want to play it that way? Fine. I got right to work getting my ducks in line for the eventual appeal. I knew they would file against my initial unemployment claim. Witnesses, pictures, events I had cataloged, etc. The whole shebang. The day comes when the judiciary calls me and I plead my side of the case. After a long phone call where I meticulously laid out how disorganized and toxic my work environment was over the course of my employment and got information on how to submit evidence, etc. I thanked the agent and we ended the call. About 3 weeks later, I got a letter from the local government saying that they ruled in my favor. This was incredible, but nerve-wracking to say the least. I knew B would file their last right to another appeal, and this time I would have to do actual court, but on the other hand, this means, since there was still a full-blown pandemic going on, I got money up front from past due UI payments and much more money a week going forward than I ever received at a job in my life. But B did eventually file their right to a second appeal. The day of court arrives, and due to the even worse state of the pandemic now, it's held over the phone. The judiciary asks me if I want my witnesses to be present during me and B's questioning, back and forth, etc. I said no, because I believed their testimony would be the same regardless, and the trial went on. Well, surprise, surprise, turns out whatever overworked employee B put in charge of submitting their evidence dropped the ball and zero info was sent to the local government or sent to the wrong branch. B's representative states they have the evidence on their computer and can send it right now. Judge informed them that that would be illegal, and they were required to send in any evidence 2 weeks ago. Judge then really goes at them for obviously not being familiar with the conditions and laws pertaining to this trial, that it was their responsibility to inform themselves or, actually read the paperwork they sent explicitly stating them. At this moment, I was air-fisting while this was going on and muting my phone so they didn't hear Peggy Hill like ho yes. So with their evidence being non-existent and my witnesses being very much real and pissed off, the trial pretty much went in my favor. And B, their rep continued to act pretty entitled, annoyed and unaware, unapologetic of their ignorance of local laws, like telling an employee who feels scared for their physical safety to not call 911. I don't think B's rep once said thank you, you're welcome, your honor, sir, or ma'am, etc. The entire trial. Well, time comes and my witnesses did even more than I thought. They shed light on situations I was not even privy to and even corroborated a lot of what I presented and more. My favorite part was when the judge asked they told you not to call the police, and the subsequent frustration from the judge after the witnesses confirmed. The trial ends and we're informed the ruling will be mailed to each of us in another 3 weeks. So 3 weeks passed, and I got a large letter informing me that again I won the appeal, and it even went on to explain in detail the laws that my employer was ignorant of, ignored, or refused to comply with, which was even more than my initial research and testimony show. I finally felt relief and got to enjoy the rest of my vacation or paid mental health sabbatical with enough money to pursue other avenues of work at my leisure with no worries of retribution or having to pay the local government back. This ended up with me eventually taking on far less hours at a much higher pay rate in a different field I've had my eye on, which has raised my quality of life so freaking much. Fast forward to now. Abe has bought out B and taken over majority control due to B's inability to generate revenue with a continual revolving employee management door. Oh, I wonder why. And has extended an offer for my original job back with a substantial pay increase and benefits package with far less hours to commit to, and with an in-writing statement saying that if in the future I want a full-time contract with even better pay benefits than my current offer, they are fully prepared to sign me on, would be thrilled if I choose to cross that bridge, etc. The real cherry on top is that B failed to disconnect me from some groups, among other things, after firing me so they got to see my new job announcement, my old coworkers and new management from AB excitement around it, and there is nothing they can do about it. Oh, and I framed that last letter detailing my final victory. I don't usually get to win much in life, but now I got a reminder of a W hanging on the wall. Oh, yeah! So, the neighbor behind me has 3 dogs. For 3 years, I've been listening to them bark, driving me nuts in the summer. Now, I get that dogs bark and play, etc. I'm talking about the constant barking at night here. Each fall, he sets up a big screen for a couple's night, and they all have their own little bonfire kettle and snuggle under blankets and watch a movie. I think it's nice. The movie is usually loud, but it's once a year, and they are always done by 10:30. No big deal. On this particular night, they are all cuddled up, watching away. I'm in my basement and can hear the dogs barking over the movie. I started fuming again. Pissed off, I walked outside, went to the fence, screaming at him, asking if he can hear his damn dogs over the movie. I stayed away from the fence, 'cause this guy is huge and I no doubt couldn't win in a fight. He dared me to come to the fence line and say it to his face. Needless to say, words were exchanged. I had just gotten done cleaning up my yard that day, so I grabbed my leaf blower and a roll of tape, started that baby up, taped the trigger down, and went back inside. 5 minutes later, there's a knock at the door. It's the cops. He called the cops on me. They wanted to ticket me for making nuisance noise if I wouldn't shut it off. I told them it's a tool and that I had till 10 p.m. to run it. While explaining the situation to them, the blower ran out of gas, and they said they were glad the situation was over. But not for me. I was really pissed. When I went back to get the blower, I grabbed my chainsaw and the tape. He saw me and was equally pissed as I ruined the movie for like 4 couples and him. More words were exchanged, much more harsh than before, but I didn't care. The chainsaw gas needed to be emptied for the winter. I can only imagine his thoughts when he heard the first couple pull on the saw. This was a couple years ago. I haven't spoken with him or heard his dogs bark at night either.